Was Abraham really the first Jew? This question has puzzled many for centuries. Some say yes, while others argue it's not that simple. What if the truth is much deeper than we've been taught? In this video, we'll uncover hidden details, explore different perspectives, and dive into the history that could change everything we know about Abraham and Jewish identity. Stick around to discover the shocking truth that has remained a mystery for so long. This question shakes the very foundation of what we think we know about history, faith, and identity. For thousands of years, Abraham has been revered as the father of the Jewish people, the man chosen by God to carry forward a divine promise. His name is etched into the hearts of millions, a symbol of unwavering faith, a guiding light through the corridors of time. But what if everything we assumed about him isn't as straightforward as it seems? What if his story is filled with layers of mystery, untold truths, and revelations that challenge what we thought we knew? This isn't just an academic question. It's an emotional one. Because when we talk about Abraham, we aren't just talking about a historical figure. We're talking about the roots of an entire people. His story is not merely words on parchment. It is the heartbeat of a civilization, the spark that ignited a lineage stretching across thousands of years. His journey was more than a personal quest. It was the birth of something far greater than himself. But here's the real question. If Judaism as a faith, a nation, and an identity was still forming during Abraham's time, can we truly call him the first Jew? Or was he simply the first believer in a vision that would one day become Judaism? Let's step back in time and uncover the truth. The weight of one man's destiny. To understand Abraham, we must first grasp the weight of his world. Imagine a time before Judaism, before Israel, before even the idea of monotheism had fully taken hold. The world was filled with gods. Gods of the sun, gods of war, gods of fertility. People bowed to statues, carved their prayers into stone, and lived under the rule of mighty kings who claimed to be divine. And then, amidst this world of idolatry and empire, a single man heard a voice. "Go from your land, your birthplace, and your father's house to the land that I will show you." That voice belonged to Yahweh, the one true God. And the man who heard it was Abram, later known as Abraham. This was the moment everything changed. It wasn't just a call to adventure. It was a call to destiny, a call that would reshape history. But Abraham didn't just receive a message. He was given something no one else had before. A covenant, a sacred promise that his descendants would become a great nation, a chosen people, set apart from the rest of the world. And this is where our question arises. Did this divine covenant make Abraham the first Jew? Or was he simply the first to carry the seed of a people that would later take shape? The moment God made his covenant with Abraham, something irreversible happened. A bond was formed, a promise sealed. "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Genesis 12, 2-3. This was the birth of an idea, a people chosen for a divine purpose. But here's the thing. Abraham didn't yet have the Torah. He didn't have the laws of Moses. He wasn't following the practices that would later define Jewish life. In fact, Judaism as we know it today didn't exist yet. There was no temple, no priests, no written commandments. All Abraham had was faith, a radical, world-changing faith. So does faith alone define Jewish identity? Or is there something more? This is where the mystery deepens. Because to answer whether Abraham was the first Jew, we must ask, what does it even mean to be Jewish? Is Jewishness about belief? If so, Abraham was certainly the first to reject idolatry and embrace the one true God. Is it about ethnicity? If so, Abraham was a Chaldean by birth, from the city of Ur. He wasn't born Jewish because the Jewish nation didn't exist yet. Is it about laws and traditions? If so, then the true formation of Judaism didn't happen until Moses received the Torah on Mount Sinai, centuries after Abraham's time. Some argue that Abraham was indeed the first Jew because he was the first to have a relationship with God in the way that would later define Judaism. Others say that Judaism, as a structured religion, only began with the giving of the law under Moses. And here's an even deeper question. Could it be that Abraham wasn't Jewish in the way we define it today, but rather the foundation upon which the Jewish people would be built? This isn't just a historical discussion. It's personal. It's about identity. In the previous section, we uncovered a deep and unsettling question. Was Abraham truly the first Jew? Or was he simply the foundation upon which an entire people would be built? To answer this, we must step even further back, into the very world that shaped him. Because Abraham was not born into a Jewish world. He was born into a world drowning in gods, empires, and forgotten civilizations. His journey didn't start with faith. It started with conflict between the world he was raised in and the voice that called him to leave it all behind. Imagine the towering ziggurats of Ur, their massive stone steps reaching toward the heavens, the air thick with the scent of burning incense as priests chanted before idols of wood and gold. This was Abraham's home, one of the most powerful cities in Mesopotamia. The heart of the ancient Sumerian Empire. Ur wasn't just a city. It was a center of commerce, culture, and religion. The people worshipped the moon god, Nana, believing their destiny was written in the stars. And in the midst of this world, a young boy named Abram was raised. A boy whose father, Terah, was a maker of idols. Can you imagine that? The very man who would go on to hear the voice of the one true God grew up in a household filled with lifeless statues, carved gods that could not speak, move, or hear. He was surrounded by rituals, sacrifices, and traditions that had existed for centuries. And yet, something within him rebelled. Something within him refused to accept the world as it was. We don't know exactly when Abram first questioned the gods of Ur. Was it a single moment of doubt? Or was it a slow, growing realization that the world around him was built on illusion? But what we do know is this. When the call came, he answered, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." Genesis 12:1. This was more than a command. It was a test, a challenge, a moment that would define history. To leave everything you've ever known. To step away from your home, your comfort, your identity. To turn your back on the world's greatest empire and walk toward the unknown with nothing but faith in a voice no one else could hear. This wasn't just an act of obedience. It was an act of revolution. To truly grasp Abraham's journey, we have to understand the world he was walking away from. This wasn't just a time of superstition. It was a time of absolute power, where kings ruled as gods and men were little more than dust beneath their feet. Across Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Canaan, civilizations flourished. Massive temples dominated cityscapes. Priests and astrologers dictated the fate of empires. Rulers claimed divine authority, and human sacrifice was seen as a path to prosperity. The world was not kind to those who questioned its order. But Abraham did something unthinkable. He walked away. He rejected the gods of his ancestors. He abandoned the safety of the greatest civilization of his time. And he followed a God that no one else could see. This is where the deeper question arises. Was Abraham already Jewish at this moment? If Judaism is about faith in one God, then Abraham was certainly its first believer. But if Judaism is about laws, traditions, and a shared national identity, then he was still just a wanderer, a man in search of a promised future. And yet, here's the remarkable thing. Every Jew who has ever lived has in some way relived Abraham's journey. Every exile, every struggle, every moment of doubt and faith. Every time a Jew has chosen to stand apart from the world and follow something greater than themselves, they have been walking in Abraham's footsteps. Or was he the first spark, the first ember of a fire that would one day become a people, a faith, a nation? What we do know is this: the moment Abraham left Ur, history changed forever. Because from that moment on, he was no longer just a man. He was a promise that would lead to a people, to a land, to a covenant that would endure for thousands of years. Stay with us, because the journey ahead is about to get even more fascinating. In the previous section, we walked alongside Abraham as he responded to God's call, stepping into the unknown with nothing but faith to guide him. As we delve deeper into the heart of Abraham's story, we discover that his journey was far from just an act of obedience. It was the beginning of something much grander, a covenant that would shape not only his destiny, but the very identity of a nation. God's voice had called Abraham to leave his home, but now it would speak in a way that would echo throughout history. The promise was clear: I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. Genesis 12:2. But these words were more than just a blessing. They were a divine oath, a promise that would carry immense weight. Abraham was not just being blessed, he was being set apart. The moment God spoke these words, Abraham's life took on a significance far beyond his understanding. A great nation, this meant descendants, an enduring legacy. But with that promise came a challenge: faith. Abraham's journey wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, filled with trials and moments of uncertainty. God had promised descendants, but there was one thing Abraham could not see: the future. How could he believe in something that seemed so distant, so impossible? After years of silence, when doubt must have crept into his heart, Isaac was born. God had promised Abraham a son, and against all odds, the miracle happened. At 90 years old, Sarah gave birth to Isaac, the miracle child, the son of promise. But as much as Isaac was a testament to God's power, he was also the living embodiment of Abraham's faith. Imagine the joy Abraham felt, holding in his arms the very child God had promised. But even then, the journey wasn't complete. God had one more test for Abraham, a test that would stretch his faith beyond its limits. Isaac, the promised son, the very future of Abraham's lineage, was to be sacrificed. As Abraham walked to the mountaintop with his beloved son by his side, the weight of the moment must have been unbearable. How could he obey God's command? The promise had been given, the son had been born, and now Abraham was being asked to give it all up. But through the pain and confusion, Abraham did not hesitate. His trust in God was unwavering. He believed that even in the darkest moments, God's plan was still good. The knife raised, the sacrifice about to be made, and then God intervened. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," the voice commanded. In that moment, Abraham's faith was proven. God had seen the depth of his trust, and through this act of obedience, the covenant was sealed. Isaac was spared. A ram was sacrificed in his place, and the promise remained intact. This was not just a father's test of obedience. This was the birth of the Jewish people. Through Isaac, Abraham's covenant with God would unfold. His descendants would become a great nation, a people called to live differently, to be a light to the world. Abraham's legacy didn't end with him. It was passed down to Isaac, and then to Jacob, whose 12 sons would form the 12 tribes of Israel. Abraham's life and faith laid the foundation for a nation that would face countless trials, yet never lose sight of the promise made long ago. Through the covenant, Abraham became the father of a people who would carry his faith forward through the generations. He was not just the father of Isaac, he was the father of Israel. And in every step, the world witnessed the enduring power of a promise. In the heart of the story of Abraham, we've seen the foundation of faith, the covenant with God, and the birth of a lineage that would change the world forever. But as we stand at the crossroads of history, a question emerges. Was Abraham truly the first Jew? The answer, like the story of Abraham himself, is more complex than it seems. To many, the answer seems clear. Abraham is the first person in history to establish a direct covenant with God. In the book of Genesis, God speaks to Abraham in a personal, profound way, promising him descendants as numerous as the stars. This covenant becomes the cornerstone of the Jewish faith. Abraham's obedience to God's command, his willingness to sacrifice, and his belief in the promise laid the foundation for the Jewish people's identity. It is in this sense that many consider Abraham the first Jew. But here's the catch. Abraham didn't live in a world where Judaism existed. The concept of religion, as we understand it today, had not yet taken shape. Abraham's faith was rooted in his personal relationship with the divine, not in the institutionalized religion that would later come to define Judaism. So, can we truly label him a Jew in the way we understand it today? To truly answer this question, we must look ahead in history. While Abraham is indeed the father of the Jewish people, Judaism as a formal religion only emerged much later, during the time of Moses and the giving of the law. Moses, the prophet who would lead the Israelites out of Egypt, received the Torah, the laws that would govern the life of the Jewish people. These laws, including the Ten Commandments, laid the foundation for what we now consider Jewish identity. A way of life, a culture, a system of laws, and a bond with God that went beyond the personal covenant Abraham had established. So, while Abraham's covenant marks the beginning of Israel, the formalization of Judaism as we know it today, with its intricate laws and practices, doesn't begin until Moses. It was through Moses that the term Jew came to be defined, and the structure of Jewish faith and practice was crystallized. Therefore, the identity of being a Jew, in the context we understand today, evolved much later. This brings us back to the question at hand. Can we really call Abraham the first Jew? The label of Jew is deeply connected to the history of the Israelites, and particularly the covenant given to Moses. However, when we look at Abraham's relationship with God, we see that his role goes far beyond the limitations of labels. Abraham's faith, obedience, and the covenant he entered into with God laid the groundwork for an entire nation, a nation whose legacy would be defined not only by their relationship with God, but also by the laws and identity they would later embrace under Moses. In essence, Abraham's story is the origin of the Jewish people. Yet, he was not a Jew in the way we would recognize the term today. The title Jew became a reality much later, as the religion and its practices were shaped through the unfolding history of the Israelites. While we may debate whether Abraham can be considered the first Jew, his legacy is undeniable. Whether or not we apply the label of Jew to Abraham, he is the spiritual father of not only the Jewish people, but also the foundation of faith for many other traditions. Christians, Muslims, and Jews all see him as a patriarch, a symbol of unwavering faith and obedience to God. The covenant Abraham entered into with God was not just for his descendants, but for all who would follow his example of faith. So, while the title of Jew might not have applied to Abraham in the same way we think of it today, the covenant he made with God was the beginning of a spiritual journey that would give birth to a nation, a faith, and a people. And in that, Abraham's role as the father of faith remains timeless. As we continue to explore Abraham's monumental journey, we reach a sacred and defining moment, the covenant of circumcision. In Genesis 17:10-14, God commands Abraham and his descendants to mark their bodies with circumcision as a sign of the eternal covenant between them and God. This ritual is not just a physical act, it is a deep, spiritual mark of identity, one that sets Abraham's lineage apart from all others. Circumcision becomes the external symbol of the internal commitment to God's promise. It's more than just a ritual, it's an unbreakable bond. A reminder that the Jewish people are chosen, set apart to carry God's word to the world. Through this act, Abraham's descendants show that they are part of something greater, part of a divine plan that began with one man's unwavering faith. But the implications stretch far beyond the physical. Theologically, circumcision represents purity, faithfulness, and submission to God's will. Historically, it became the defining marker of Jewish identity, distinguishing them from other nations. Through this act, Abraham's legacy lives on, and with each new generation, the covenant is renewed, proving that their identity is forever tied to the promise made by God. As we reflect on the sacred covenant that Abraham entered into with God, we realize that his legacy extends far beyond the borders of ancient Israel. Abraham was not just the father of the Jewish people. He is also a central figure in Christianity and Islam. His unwavering faith, his commitment to God's promise, transcended time and culture, becoming the bedrock for three of the world's largest religions. For Judaism, Abraham's covenant marked the birth of a people chosen to carry the divine message. For Christianity, he is a symbol of faith and trust in God's plan, often cited as the model for believers. In Islam, Abraham, or Ibrahim, is regarded as a prophet and a key figure in the lineage of prophets, a man who surrendered to God's will completely. Abraham's impact is profound. Across religions and cultures, his story resonates as a timeless example of faith, obedience, and divine purpose. His legacy is woven into the fabric of humanity, uniting millions in their shared belief in one God. Abraham's covenant, though ancient, continues to shape the hearts of billions, reminding us of the power of faith to change the course of history. As we unravel the complexities of Abraham's journey, we find ourselves standing at a crossroads of faith, history, and identity. Was Abraham the first Jew? The answer is not as straightforward as it may seem. While his covenant with God marks the birth of a great nation, the Jewish identity as we know it today only emerged much later. Abraham, though foundational, was not Jewish in the way we understand the term. Yet, his unwavering faith and the promise he received from God laid the groundwork for a people, a legacy, and a belief system that would endure for millennia. This raises a deeper question. What truly defines identity? Is it the labels we place on ourselves, or the promises we keep, the faith we live by? Abraham's story reminds us that identity is a journey, one that is shaped by our beliefs, choices, and the covenants we honor. If this mystery has sparked a new way of thinking, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like this video. We have more stories to explore, more questions to ask. Stick around for the next chapter in this incredible journey and leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's dive deeper together.